What's up, trainers? Welcome to my solo queue tier list for Pokemon Unite. I do want to say right at the beginning here that you could get to master on any Pokemon you want. So if your favorite Pokemon is low on this list, then don't let that stop you from playing whoever you want to play. Every single Pokemon has their strengths and weaknesses, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I made this tier list while I was live streaming. There will be a link to the stream in the video description, so feel free to come by and say hello or ask any questions that you might have about Pokemon Unite. Without further ado, here is my solo queue tier list for Pokemon Unite. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Let's start it off with Venusaur. Right when mobile released, this Pokemon instantly popped off. Petal Dance gives you this AoE damage all around you, so you just run into a group of people, Petal Dance everybody, and then you Giga Drain to drain all of their life, and you get 40% less damage taken because of the damage reduction buff. And the secret sauce that makes Venusaur actually super strong is not even something that the game tells you, but I believe Unite DB does tell you. Petal Dance reduces the cooldown of Sludge Bomb or Giga Drain by 1 second per tick of damage that hits an enemy Pokemon. Look at this. This thing ticks 16 times. So if you hit somebody with all 16 ticks, that's 16 seconds of cooldown reduced. And this move, by the way, only has a 7-second cooldown. So during the span of Petal Dance, you could be doing 3, maybe even 4 Giga Drains in that amount of time. So you're just draining a ton of health, having a bunch of damage reduction on your Pokemon all the time. This Pokemon is really freaking good. Recommended build, I would say Buddy Barrier, Focus Band, Muscle Band. A pretty standard build, but it's just going to be a lot of damage. During your Petal Dance, you can still auto attack, so Muscle Band is a really good item on this Pokemon. Gengar is a Pokemon I'm really sad to put it into the tier that I'm about to put it into, because I love this Pokemon. I used to put it in the A tier, but I'm spreading things out on this tier list. Gengar unfortunately didn't make the cut, didn't make it to A tier, but I'm still putting them near the top of the B tier. For the first 7-ish minutes of the game, you can actually get a lot done. You can be very powerful. You can really dominate the game. The problem occurs once you reach the late game. When I'm a Gengar during the Zapdos period and I'm trying to like be effective during the Zapdos fight, the best I can really offer to my team is like maybe assassinating one key target by ulting underneath them and sneaking up. But even that isn't a guaranteed thing that can happen every time, because your assassination target needs to be isolated and you need to ult at just the right time to catch them while they're isolated, so it's not very consistent. Recommended items for Gengar: Wise Glasses, Choice Specs, and then Shell Bell or Energy Amplifier. I don't go any defensive items. Probably one of the only Pokemon in the game who I would say don't go any defensive items, go pure offense if you want to get the most out of this character. Mr. Mime up next. I think that Mr. Mime is actually really rising up in my eyes. I think they were always good, I just wasn't really seeing it. Once they reach level 4 and they unlock Confusion, that's when you can really snowball out of control. If you can unlock Confusion before the first set of bees spawn in, you can collect all those bees with the massive Confusion damage. You do even more damage than Snorlax. Snorlax is usually the king of early game damage with tackle and a boosted auto attack. Confusion actually beats that out. So Mr. Mime actually super strong once you hit level 4. Really good Unite move. Unlocked at level 9. Most supports get their Unite moves at level 8. Mr. Mime gets it at level 9, but Mr. Mime's Unite move is actually a ton of damage. It's actually a huge deal. It really spaces people out. It kind of reminds me of like a mini Cramorant ult, where just people never want to be in the Cramorant ult. People never want to be around an ulting Mr. Mime. Snorlax is next. Snorlax is a Pokemon that used to be a king, used to be in S tier, used to be in A tier in my previous tier list, and oh my gosh, how the mighty have fallen. I'm gonna put Snorlax into B tier. The problem with Snorlax is that, yeah, you can help your team a lot get through the laning phase, but after that point, you're kind of at the mercy of your team. You can throw out the gnarliest heavy slam, the biggest yawn, a massive 5-man block keeping 5 enemies stuck in against a wall. But if your team isn't ready to capitalize and do damage, then you actually haven't really accomplished much on Snorlax. So from like a solo perspective, when you make these massive plays, they actually aren't massive until your team comes in and makes them massive. Compared to Mr. Mime, where you just land a good confusion plus block and you stun a bunch of people and then you jump in with your ult and do a bunch of damage. Like, that's a big play just all on its own, regardless of what your team was doing. Snorlax, on the other hand, you really need your team to be supporting you on those big plays to make them truly big plays. Recommended items is my standard tank stuff: Buddy Barrier, Focus Band, Score Shield. Gardevoir, another Pokemon who has fallen from grace recently. I used to put them in the A tier. I'm like, guys, you can carry. It's solo queue. Just do your best. I'm sorry, it just doesn't stack up against the competition. The early game is too weak, and the saving grace used to be that the Unite move was so powerful you could just mega hard carry during the Zapdos fight. But right now, with all this high damage meta, like, Gardevoir can just get blown up and then you don't even get to ult sometimes, so your ult just isn't even as powerful during the Zapdos meta, during the Zapdos time anymore. You know, you got Pokemon like Talonflame running around. You can't catch them in your ult. You got Gengars. You got Cinderaces, Sylveon, Venusaur. Like, Sylveon, Venusaur isn't the most mobile, but still, they get a speed buff from Petal Dance. So it's like kind of hard to really get that big value out of Gardevoir during the Zapdos fight. And it's just even worse. The early game just keeps on becoming more and more important. Every week I think, like, okay, things are going to change. We're going to start focusing more on the late game. We're going to start focusing more on Zapdos. Nope. The metagame just becomes more and more about the early game, the first Dreadnought, the first team fight, you know, stuff like that. And for the early game and the first Dreadnought fight, Gardevoir's trash. You're lucky if you're level 6 and you have your Psyshock to do a bunch of damage. Yeah, Psyshock can do a lot of damage, but that's all you're really getting out of this Pokemon at level 6. For the Dreadnought fight, you get this, you know, 3 ticks of 77% damage. Like, this is good damage, right? Nothing to scoff at. But if you compare this to another Pokemon like Cramorant, who's going to have Surf and Hurricane at level 6, let's compare this to Sylveon, who's going to have Mystical Fire or Hyper Voice. Even just this level 4 move alone is probably already better than Psyshock. But on top of that, you're also having your level 6 move, your utility move, Draining Kiss or Calm Mind. I'm sorry, but Gardevoir, you just don't stack up against the competition. You're just really bad compared to the rest. I'm very sorry. So Absol, this is a Pokemon that's been honestly underperforming since day one. With the new items, they kind of are a little bit better, but I think that they still suffer from the exact same problems as before. They fall off in the late game, and Zapdos is really important. So if Absol isn't able to be super effective during the Zapdos fight, then it's really a hindrance to your team. And in the early game, you're only about as strong as Talonflame, and Talonflame is still good during the Zapdos fight. So Absol just weaker than Talonflame right now. Still better than Gardevoir. I am putting them below Gengar, specifically for solo queue, because I think that while Gengar also has a similar problem of not being the best at Zapdos, you can still do okay. You can still honestly have a pretty good chance of pulling off that assassination. Absol, like, yeah, your goal if you are playing Absol and it's Zapdos is up, your goal should be to try to assassinate a key target, and Absol can kind of do that. I just think Gengar is better at doing that, so Gengar goes higher up in the tier list. But Absol, I would say, has a better, like, level 1 to level 6. They're stronger than Gengar, but once Gengar hits level 7, I think Gengar is better than Absol just for the rest of the game. Lucario, meta defining. This Pokemon is ultra good. Lucario is like the top of how strong you should be. If you're stronger than Lucario, then that's a big issue. You shouldn't be stronger than Lucario. Lucario is the top of the top. And what's super meta defining about Lucario right now is that Lucario is so strong that they can take a 1v2 lane. So right now, the meta at top level masters and in top level tournament play is to actually tri lane. You send 3 players bottom and only 1 player into the top lane. That player plays Lucario, and this Pokemon is so strong that even if the enemies don't go with the tri lane meta, they go with the 2-1-2. They have 2 in the top lane, and Lucario is stuck stuck in a 2v1, Lucario can still go ham. You can still go with the recommended build, Score Shield, Attack Weight, Muscle Band. Garchomp, we're putting this guy into D tier. I'm sorry, Garchomp. I know you get dumpstered on every single time a tier list gets made, not just by me, but by anybody. We're all putting you in the bottom of the tier list. You know, you got, in order to be useful at all, you gotta have levels. You know, you can't just be a little Gibble. Even if you're Gabite, you're still pretty weak. You know, when you're Gabite at the first Dreadnought fight, you're really still not even doing much for the team. So having a similar problem as Gardevoir, where you're just not very strong during that first Dreadnought fight, which is really important. And then the even bigger issue with Garchomp that makes them even worse is that Gardevoir still has this, like, at least somewhat of a saving grace, where they have their Unite move, which is pretty good at, you know, winning fights at Zapdos. Garchomp's Unite move, you know, it can still win fights, but it can't like solo win a fight. Like if a Garchomp ult wins a fight, it's because a Snorlax stunned everybody and just like got them all clumped up for the Garchomp. It's because a Blastoise grouped them all up, or like some other Pokemon helped group up the opponent Pokemon and keep them crowd controlled for Garchomp to really do their work. But it usually isn't Garchomp doing the carrying. It's actually the Snorlax who carried, the Blastoise who carried, or whoever did the crowd controlling. That's the person who carried. Garchomp was just happened to be the Pokemon doing damage, but really better off using literally any other damage dealer would be better at capitalizing off of the support that that can come from crowd control. I mean, yeah, Garchomp can capitalize really hard, but it's just not necessary, honestly, is the problem. Like, you invest so much into getting this Garchomp online so that you can capitalize really hard off of your teammates using their crowd control. But like, if you had just used like Lucario or Venusaur, you would have been way less investment to get strong, and you still get the same effect of hard punishing opponents when your ally crowd controls them. So I'm sorry, Garchomp, you're just not good. Alright, Crustle is a Pokemon that I love. The laning phase is serviceable on this Pokemon. It's good enough to get you through and get you to level 6, which is going to give you your Rock Tomb and your Stealth Rocks. Crustle actually has a really strong kit at level 6 for that first Dreadnought. The Stealth Rocks is going to be able to do tons and tons of damage to that Dreadnought if necessary. You can also throw it underneath your opponents if you just want to space them out, make it so that they can't fight your team because they're just trying to walk away from the Stealth Rock damage. You can throw up the Stealth Rocks to block opponents so they can't reach the Dreadnought as easily unless they want to burn a resource like a dash or their eject button. Once you get your Unite move, that's a really powerful Unite move for just like completely winning any team fight that you want to win, especially with Buddy Barrier. It's a really good during any team fight, whether it's over the Dreadnought or the Zapdos. And then again, that same reason why that toolkit is good for taking Dreadnought, that toolkit is also good for taking the Zapdos. You can do damage to kill the Zapdos fast, and you have a wall to make it so opponents get to the Zapdos slower. And these are both two really important tools for securing an objective: damage and slowing down your opponents on their way to the objective. So Crustle, really strong Pokemon. I really like them for solo queue. Now Greninja is a Pokemon who used to be S tier, then they got nerfed, but they also got buffed in the same patch, and the buff actually made their Unite move a little bit better. All they sacrificed was like a little bit of like surf damage or something, so it wasn't a big deal. They also buffed Double Team, so Double Team is now actually like a really good move. The fake double teams actually kind of act like real people a little bit. They improved the AI basically. They used to just like walk around, auto attack once, walk around, auto attack once, and then disappear, and it's just like, okay, super obvious that that's a fake because humans don't act like that. Now the fake Greninjas, when you double team, they actually use moves. They'll use Surf or Water Shuriken or whatever you have, and you can also use it during a team fight, and it's just actually a little bit more confusing because those little Greninjas actually they act a little bit more like a human because they actually use moves. You know, some people say they're not as powerful as they used to be. I think Greninja is pretty much as powerful as they used to be. The only reason why I'm not putting Greninja into the S tier for right now, my feeling, is because of Venusaur. Venusaur kind of bullies Greninja out of being S tier, because when a Venusaur is pedal dancing, it really limits what you can do as a Greninja. Because as a Greninja, you usually want to have the option to like either fight from long range, or if the enemies are all stacked up, you get in there and you do melee damage, so you're just cleaving all of them. You're doing damage AoE to everybody who's clumped up. But with Venusaur, you don't want to step into that pedal dance range, so you're kind of forced to play with range always on Greninja. Even against a Venusaur, Greninja can be okay. They just aren't always able to reach their top maximum potential, because Venusaur is like, hey, stay away from my team, I'm pedal dancing. And Greninja's like, oh, okay, fine, I guess I'm A tier. Talonflame, this is a Pokemon that rose up at right when mobile dropped. We got new items, Razor Claw and Weakness Policy are the 2 damage items. Actually, no, they were all damage items. Weakness Policy, Razor Claw, and Choice Specs. 3 new items. It just blew up the meta, catapulted us into the damage meta, and I think no Pokemon shows that more clearly than Talonflame. Talonflame is a Pokemon who in the past, he would like fly in, drop down, do damage to people, and then the people that the Talonflame just damaged are still alive, and the Talonflame is like, oh, I'm in the middle of a group of 3 people, they're all still alive, I'm a Talonflame, so I'm extremely squishy, I just use Fly, so I have no escape mechanism. If I took a Flame Charge, then I guess I can get out, but a lot of times you just drop in there with like your Brave Bird or your Fly, and then you didn't do enough damage to kill anybody, and then you just get reverse KO'd. But now with these new items, Talonflame can run Razor Claw, and it's such a small thing, but Razor Claw makes it so that Talonflame does that little extra bit of damage. So now when Talonflame kaboom drops into a group of 3 people and does an auto attack, then like kind of kites around and then flame charges in and does another auto attack, that's at least enough damage to kill 1 key target if you focus that damage onto at least 1 squishy target. But if you are doing that damage onto like people who are clumped up, you might be killing like 2 people at once with that combo, and it's a big freaking deal for Talonflame, because like I said before, Talonflame comes in, drops in, and then everyone around them is still, all the enemies around are still alive, and he's just out of luck. But now Talonflame flies in, drops in, kaboom, right into the A tier and says, hey, you're all dead. And then all the other Pokemon in that fight are just like, oh yeah, I guess you're right, I guess I am dead, in the blink of an eye. I put a 1 in chat if a Talonflame has just completely obliterated you in the blink of an eye in the last 2 weeks. Okay, put a 1 in chat if that's you. I'm gonna put a 1 in chat because I've gotten obliterated by a Talonflame for sure in the blink of an eye. That has definitely happened to me. Look, Glissey with the 1 in chat. Glissey putting 1 in chat. Cookie Derps with the 1. You see what I mean? Like, this is what Talonflames be doing. And in the past, Talonflame couldn't really do that. But now they can, and it's really strong. I recommend trying this Pokemon out. If you tried them before and you thought they were weak, give them another try because they're really good now. Charizard. This is a Pokemon that just really grew up and glue up. This is a Pokemon that has been working hard since day 1, a fan favorite, but they were in the dumpster tier when the game first came out. They got an update where the Unite move, in my opinion, got better. The suplex happens at the beginning of the move where you pick people up and smash them down, so you can like use it to like make yourself invulnerable. I've seen people like, they're like, oh, I'm about to get nuked, so let me just pop my Unite and pick somebody up, take them up into the air, and I'm invulnerable while I'm in the air on Charizard, and then I slam them down and they just avoided all that damage. And then after the Unite move, they're just a big menace. Just like, they can't be crowd controlled, and they're just doing gigantic heaps of AoE damage with their gigantic flame breath. The feeling that you get when a Charizard is ulting you, you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm under attack and I can't run away, I can't CC this Pokemon. It's really forcing when Charizard just ults you and the Charizard is like ahead. This might be a bit of a hot take. Some of you guys might not agree that Charizard goes up this high. I'm putting him in the bottom of A tier. I think they deserve it. I would have put him in the B tier in the past, and when I was thinking about this tier list, I was thinking maybe B tier, mid B tier, but honestly, you can really carry your games with Charizard. The problem that I was seeing, and the reason why I was thinking about putting them into B tier, is that they aren't strong enough for the first Dreadnought fight. But Charizard, I think, has enough ranged options where you can actually play safe and be somewhat, you can contribute at least a little bit during that first Dreadnought fight. I would actually say Charizard is about as useful as a Gardevoir during the first Dreadnought fight. Gardevoir is weak during the Dreadnought, but she kind of makes up for it by having a really strong Unite. Charizard makes up for it by just being a really strong Pokemon once you're past like the 5 to 6 minute mark. Once you've actually evolved into Charizard and you have that Unite move online, you have the stats from evolving, this Pokemon becomes really strong. You can really be effective during any team fight, especially the Zapdos team fight. I think that a Charizard, if it was a choice between having a Charizard during a Zapdos team fight and a Gardevoir, I would pick the Charizard. I know Gardevoir ult is really good, but Charizard ult is super amazing too. You just pick up one person with that fly up and you smash them down, do a ton of damage, and then you have this flame breath that's just like, people freak out. They're like, oh my gosh, scramble, because we don't all want to stand together and get flame breath together. So I think the Charizard is actually a beast in the late game team fights for sure. Zeraora is a Pokemon that I previously thought was worse than Gengar, and then I was like, okay, they're a little better than Gengar, and now, okay, I've seen the truth. They're actually a lot better than Gengar. I participated in a tournament where we had a Zeraora on the team, and they went into the solo lane and they made me believe in Zera. They were just like explaining things to me about different matchups and how like you use discharge, and like if you're a Zeraora player who's just like gonna see like, oh, Zeraora's an A tier, I'm gonna just pick them up and be brain dead and click discharge, and that's my whole plan. That's not reaching Zeraora's top potential, and that's not what makes Zeraora top tier. What makes Zeraora top tier is when you play Zeraora smart. You gotta pop that discharge and jump in when you're on a flank route, when you can like disrupt the backline, and you gotta be ready to volt switch back out. You can go Spark, but that's really all in. You don't really have any like backup escape tool with Spark. Yeah, you can dash 3 times, but the dash is so short. With Volt Switch, like you Volt Switch in, and then you can Volt Switch all the way back to your original position. So Volt Switch really good for this like kind of flanky playstyle that I recommend for Zeraora. Okay, let's move on to Cinderace. This is a Pokemon that's been S tier since the game came out, and they're still S tier. They used to be like S plus and like a tier above the rest, because the game had just come out and Cinderace was really easy to use and they were overtuned. They did way too much damage, but then they got nerfed, so they fell down a little bit and people started getting better at the game, so Pokemon like Lucario and Greninja were able to rise up. This Pokemon is really reliable for doing single target damage. Just like you're in there, you're clicking A, when enemies get too close you flame charge out, or you pop feint to do iframes to dodge like a Zeraora ult. You can go Pyro Ball for like group AoE damage, burst damage. Pyro Ball does a ton of damage now after the buffs. Blaze Kick is really good if you just want to do as much single target damage as possibly possible. Really good for positioning yourself, because you dash to the target and you like kick flip off of them and you end up like within range to just like auto attack down whoever you just blaze kicked. So this blaze kick is good for like getting you in position to like fry somebody. This Pokemon just has a bunch of good moves. They pretty much always go in the jungle right now, and so they're really powerful by the time Dreadnought spawns in, because they're in the jungle position. Sometimes you can even get your ult. Cinderace ult happens at level 9, and if you can have your ult for that Dreadnought, oh, it's a wrap. You ult that fight. You don't even have to land a good ult. You just have to ult at all, because it gives Cinderace and any Pokemon who ults, they get a massive attack speed, movement speed buff, just making this Pokemon like goes like Super Saiyan mode basically for like 5 seconds, and you just completely take over the team fight. Really strong Pokemon if you can ult for the first Dreadnought. Even if you don't have ult for the first Dreadnought, you're still a big menace just for the damage you represent. In the Zapdos fight, pretty much the same thing as a Dreadnought fight. Like, you're just such a powerful menace. You have so much damage. You're just there peppering people with damage, and if it's like a big moment, you just pop that ult and then you go Super Saiyan mode. They just really do a lot at all points in the game. Easy, I agree, Sly. Cinder is an easy Pokemon. It's a textbook. If you're trying to learn this game and you want to just play something that you can carry yourself with, play Cinderace, because if you lose, I guarantee you every time there's going to be something that you could have done better. So it's going to really help you if you just want to focus on improving yourself. Play Cinderace. It's going to be easy to like see what you're doing wrong, because this Pokemon is so simple. Like, if you die, it's because you overextended. If you didn't get a kill, it's because your mechanics weren't good with like comboing your moves. Eldegoss. I don't think that this Pokemon is super amazing for carrying yourself, because at the end of the day, you're supporting your teammates, but like you can't win the game on your own as an Eldegoss. You still need your teammates to do damage. Kind of the same issue as Snorlax, so I'm actually putting them in the same tier as Snorlax, right next to Snorlax, right behind them. because they suffer from the same issue of like you can give the world to your team, but if your team doesn't want to capitalize, then did you even give your team anything? But still, this Pokemon is pretty good. They stay alive a lot because they have a lot of movement speed, a lot of abilities that just like slow enemies and just help this Pokemon survive a lot. Leaf Tornado is a really good move for giving the whole team a ton of movement speed. Making your allies move more is a form of reducing the damage they take, because if they can move faster, they can get out of danger faster. So it's a bit like healing them in a way. If there's a Cinderace or a Greninja on the enemy team, then Leaf Tornado is going to blind them, so they actually can't land their normal attacks. If you go Palm Puff instead, that's actually still a totally viable move. I think this Pokemon is actually really good because of how reliable they are. Their Unite move is really strong. I actually ended up putting Eldegoss above Blissey because of the Unite move. I think that the Unite move is what puts it over the edge for me. It just does so much damage, and you can like drop it like at the click of a button, kind of like Talonflame Fly, and you can snipe objectives the same way you can with Fly, but with Eldegoss ult. So with Eldegoss ult, you can steal a Dreadnought, you can steal a Zapdos. The fact that you can like snipe last hits with Eldegoss ult is what pushes them over the edge to the point where you actually kind of low-key can carry yourself a little bit better, almost better than Snorlax. But I think that Snorlax still, even though you're reliant on your team, like it's so much easier to just get a big heavy slam ult block combo on Snorlax than getting the Zapdos snipe with the Eldegoss ult. And we're going to go ahead and go to Blissey since we just talked about Eldegoss. I kind of used to think that you could actually carry your games because you actually represent so much damage through Helping Hand. The problem is that you only represent that amount of damage when your teammates are smart enough to be there. Sometimes there's like a team fight happening in the bottom lane, so you want to be there for it, but your freaking Cinderace just wants to farm the jungle and you can't do anything about that. If you do have allies who are smart, then Blissey's incredible, so they still make it into B tier because you just need a Pokemon with like at least 2 brain cells to rub together and make a spark. Then this Cinderace is probably going to be there for the Dreadnought and the Zapdos, so you can Helping Hand them and it's going to be pretty good. The Unite move does actually deal damage, and you can I've stolen Dreadnoughts on Zapdoses before with Blissey Unite, but it's not a reliable thing at all. I've actually stolen Zapdos with Blissey Helping Hand into boosted auto attacks too. Like you can get snipes, but those are just like kind of random things that sometimes happen. Definitely not as easy to snipe as it is with Eldegoss with that big beefy Eldegoss ult damage or Snorlax heavy slam damage. Blissey can do some burst damage, but it's not very consistent. Anyway, they end up just slightly below Eldegoss, mainly because of the fact that Eldegoss can actually snipe the Zapdos, and sometimes sniping the Zapdos is all you need to do to carry a game. Cramorant is a Pokemon who I put really high on the tier list in the past. All you need is level 6 on Cramorant to be really effective during that Dreadnought fight, and for the whole first 7 minutes of the game, you're just really effective. You do a lot of damage, you do a lot of CC. They did actually get a nerf onto their Unite move and to their Surf damage. So Unite move now does slightly less damage, Surf now does slightly less damage, and now in the Zapdos fight, I just really feel like Cramorant is lacking a little bit more than before. Cramorant's still a pretty powerful, like just like Gengar, where you're not like super powerful during the Zapdos fight, but you can do things and it's pretty good. Cramorant ult isn't super like dominant in the Zapdos fight anymore because you're already starting to fall off in damage in the late game, and they made it even worse by nerfing the Unite move damage on Cramorant, so you're not super crazy powerful like before when Cramorant was A tier, but you still do some things. You still space people out, so it's still like pretty decent in the Zapdos situation. On to Blastoise. So Blastoise is a Pokemon that I've been having a lot of fun with since they came out. I think their early game is really honestly very fun. You got that Skull Bash as a dash and stun, and Water Gun to push people super far. So you Skull Bash behind somebody in the early game and then push them all the way into your teammate. Where it gets a little weak is actually right around the first Dreadnought. You aren't super powerful. That's the main weakness of Blastoise, is they're a bit like Gardevoir, where they only have one of their moves by the time Dreadnought spawns in, because Blastoise gets Water Spout / Hydro Pump at level 5, which is a good move. That's fine and dandy. It's going to help you during the Dreadnought. But what you really need during the Dreadnought is Surf or Rapid Spin, because these are the moves that are going to help you space people out, to help you control space. Use Surf to like push enemies away when they get too close, or push enemies into a wall if you want to trap them for your team to wail on. Rapid Spin able to control space in kind of a different way, where you're just rapid spinning in an area. People are most likely going to respect the rapid spin because they just don't want to take a bunch of free damage. This Unite move charges up so fast, 112 seconds, really one of the most powerful ults in the game, if not the most powerful ult in the game. It just does so much damage. It's a ton of crowd control. It's super good. That Unite move will completely carry a team fight, any team fight you want it to use it on. You just use it at the right moment on like 2 or 3 key targets, and you are doing everything that you need to be doing to carry that team fight. I'm gonna put them right below Greninja. Now on to Pikachu. This is a Pokemon that I wanted to believe in. Honestly, to me, Pikachu just feels like a weaker Cramorant. Pikachu does have a little bit more range on their stun than Cramorant. The Unite move is pretty similar to Cramorant's, where it's just like a really powerful Unite move, but I am putting them lower on the tier list than Cramorant just because they have a little less damage. They do make up for it by having range. If you prefer that playstyle of playing from further away and you're like, oh, Gardevoir is really low on the tier list, so let me try Pikachu, I think Pikachu is going to be pretty good. If you just want to play a long range caster, they actually have a great early game. Level 1 through 3, they have Electro Web, so if anybody comes to gank while you still have Electro Web, you can really reliably stun somebody for a pretty long time. Once you level up to 6, you have both your moves. You're going to have Electro Ball or Thunder plus the stun. They really just fall off by the time you're in the late game. So during that Zapdos fight, you're not as effective as you could be. Still in the B tier, because you're still like level 4 to level 6. You have these moves and you're really strong for most of the game. Like I usually say for these other Pokemon, strong for like the first 7 minutes. But the last 3 minutes, and when Zapdos is in here, you start to fall off, and that's like not a good look. So I can't really put this Pokemon higher up in the tier list. Ninetales is a Pokemon who used to be in the top of A tier because of the damage they provide all throughout the game, because of the crowd control they provide all throughout the game, and just those 2 things alone were enough to make this Pokemon top of A tier for me. The crowd control specifically was really impactful. The way that canceling moves works, where like if you're in the startup animation of a move, but then you get stunned, and then that cooldown, the move cooldown still triggers, but the move doesn't actually do anything. Like the fact that Ninetales can just kind of accidentally cause that to happen by just stunning you with their passive, their freeze passive, it was just really powerful. People have gotten more used to the game. They understand that like, okay, if I'm in the middle of the fray, I might not actually be able to pop my moves, so I need to pop my moves like earlier on during the team fight before I jump in, or right when I jump in, so that I don't get crowd controlled and lose the cooldown. The problem right now that I see with Ninetales is that basically the meta became about these Pokemon, basically Talonflame and Venusaur, just doing tons of damage really fast, and now Ninetales doesn't actually have enough time to rack up a ton of damage like a Cinderace can, because Cinderace, with these Talonflame and Venusaur running around in the meta, Cinderace can still like run around, stand wherever they need to stand, and just like keep kicking those fireballs and doing tons of damage. With Ninetales, by comparison, you can't actually be as mobile. You have to be standing on that Aura Veil to be doing that high damage. So when crap hits the fan and there's a Venusaur in your face pedal dancing, or there's a Talonflame flying above your head ready to pounce down on you, as a Ninetales, you might have to leave the safety of your Aura Veil. You might have to walk away, and now you can't do that damage. On top of that, like I said, people got better about playing around the stun. So for both of these reasons combined, I am dropping Ninetales down into the B tier. And the biggest issue with Ninetales right now that puts them all the way near the bottom of B tier, barely above Pikachu, the biggest problem with Ninetales is just the Unite move. It does so little. It doesn't do very much damage. Maybe in the early game it can be a nice big chunk of damage, but in the Zapdos fight, oh my gosh, Ninetales ult doesn't even do that much damage. But again, not a bad Pokemon to play if you're trying to just carry yourself in solo queue. It's still decent. It's like the same thing with Pikachu, you know, you're just a little weak during that during that Zapdos fight. But if you just do work for the first 7 minutes, then maybe your team will actually get in a strong enough position where they carry you during the Zapdos fight. Anyway, let's move on to Wigglytuff. Is a Pokemon that I actually think is pretty good at carrying herself. I used to put Wiggly in S tier. I used to think they were amazing for carrying yourself. You could just run in there, any team fight, sing. I love Wigglytuff. Thank you. I love Wigglytuff too. Cookie Derps, thank you for casting the rollout on us. Oh, we're actually talking about Wigglytuff while you rollouted. Thank you. Cookie Derps, actually perfect timing. You probably planned that. But they used to be totally unbalanced, totally S tier. They could just run in, live forever, sing, put everyone to sleep, do a ton of damage with Dazzling Gleam, and Pokemon just like stay asleep even when they get hit. But they actually did a couple nerfs to Wigglytuff. First of all, they nerfed the sleep status to where now when you get smacked by something, you actually wake up. So when somebody hits you, you actually wake up. At least that's what they say. Personally, from my personal experience, I feel like I'm just asleep for the full duration no matter what. I feel like I've never seen anybody wake up early, but apparently that's what the patch notes say, is that you wake up early now if you get hit by something. So that's a bit of a nerf to sleep. But the other big nerf to Wiggly was just to her damage. Wiggly was kind of insane because they could just snowball out of control during the early game because their damage was so high. They were, I think, the highest damage support in the game. But now with that nerf, I think that Mr. Mime and Wigglytuff are probably about tied. For right now, if people are still staying asleep during Sing, then this is really good. You can really carry the team. You can do a lot of crowd control. Let's just say you catch the Greninja tripping and you put them to sleep while they're at half health, then you just dazzle and gleam them, and you probably get the kill because Greninja is such a squishy Pokemon compared to Snorlax, where Snorlax can heavy slam a half health Greninja, and if they don't have any follow-up, then that Greninja actually gets to live. Whereas Wigglytuff doesn't necessarily need the follow-up. They actually can do a bit of that damage on their own, so they are a little more self-sufficient and able to actually carry in solo queue a little bit better. Wigglytuff Sing comes at level 4, so really early in the laning phase, you got Sing to help you secure the first bees, to help you on the first Dreadnought fight, help you on the Rotom, help you on the Zapdos. Sing, just an incredible move. Next Pokemon is Slowbro, the other Pokemon that's going to be joining Garchomp in the dumpster tier. So they get their moves by level 6, right? So that's nice. The other defenders don't have both moves by level 6, so that's something. So maybe that's making Slowbro viable during the Dreadnought fight, but I think just after that first Dreadnought fight, Slowbro just falls way off. It's just way worse than any other possible defender that you could be playing. Blastoise, Crustle, Snorlax. Even Mamoswine would be better later in the game. Slowbro only really better than the other options during the first Dreadnought fight, and it's like not even that much better. Mamoswine is a Pokemon that I'm putting in the C tier. So they have a great level 1 through like 5. You don't even evolve from Swinub until level 6. I think either Ice Fang plus Earthquake or Icicle Crash plus High Horsepower is the way that I would go. Both movesets there are good, but it's just that like at level 8 when you get these moves, like you're still not even evolved, so your stats aren't even that high. Yeah, you have your combo online finally, but you don't even have all the full damage online because you haven't gotten your Mamoswine level 10 evolution yet. You're not hitting level 8 before the first Dreadnought fight unless you like completely demolished your lane during the laning phase. And I think that although Swinubs level 1 through 5 are pretty good, it's not enough to guarantee that you're going to crush the lane and get to level 8 by the first Dread. So that the main problem with Mamoswine is just how late into the game they actually finally scale up. They don't even get their second move until level 8, same as Gardevoir. They don't even evolve and get their Unite move all the way to level 10, which is horrible. And to make matters worse, Mamoswine's ult damage is not even good. It's not even a good ult. We went over this earlier, but we'll talk about it again. The damage is lackluster. The crowd control is decent on the final stomp, knocking people up. The damage is decent. But the problem is that as a defender, when you unite, you want to have like great crowd control like with Blastoise, or you want to have some healing like with Snorlax, because both of those ults really help make sure that the defender who ulted stays alive. Mamoswine with Mammoth Smash, on the other hand, you can ult and actually just still get killed. Now onto Machamp. We're gonna put Machamp into the bottom of C tier, and I'm sure this might be the other hot take. I used to put them pretty high up into the A tier, but I really think they started to fall off, and they honestly got replaced by Charizard as the premier all-rounder who's not Lucario. You're so even worse than Charizard. Charizard doesn't have the greatest first Dreadnought. Machamp's first Dreadnought is even worse. Let's go ahead and take a look at Machamp's moves. Machamp's first Dreadnought, you probably don't even have close combat. You probably only have Dynamic Punch or Submission. Oh my gosh, like this is not a good move to help you win the Dreadnought. Like, yeah, you can maybe pick off one person with Submission. Maybe you can get a nice little stun with Dynamic Punch, but you're so squishy that if you Dynamic Punch in onto like multiple people, you're probably just getting obliterated after that. And then once you get to the late game, like, yeah, it's good. You can do a lot of damage at the beginning of the fight, but like I said, I feel like Machamp just doesn't survive during fights anymore. They used to survive, barely. I know that was enough, but now with the damage items in the meta, I think that Machamp gets blown up. So that's why I personally put them lower on the tier list. I feel like when they're in my games, they're getting killed during the team fights. They're definitely having a huge impact at the beginning of the fight, but right after that, we just focus them down, and that's a wrap. All right, and now finally, the moment you've all been waiting for. It's time to talk about Sylveon, baby. It feels like everybody on YouTube is like uploading like multiple videos a day just talking about this Pokemon, because they're so powerful and they're like Hyper Voice does so much damage. Everybody wants to shout from the rooftops, Hyper Voice is really good. They're using a Hyper Voice IRL. Mystical Fire, really reliable. Hyper Voice, not as reliable, a little more team dependent, but if you can pull it off, this is so much damage. They are a mid-range mage, or they're almost a battle mage, but more like a mid-range mage. There are short-range characters like Machamp, for example, or Garchomp, who want to be really close to you so they can do all of their damage. And then there are long-range characters like Cinderace, who can be really far from you and do a ton of damage. Yamisora, thank you for the hot dog. Sylveon is a character who exists in between those two types of characters. Sylveon doesn't want to be in melee range because that's where the Machamps and the Lucarios just obliterate Sylveon, but they don't want to be in long range because that's where Cinderace just keeps playing from max range and the Sylveon can't reach with their Hyper Voice or with their Mystical Fire. The moves just do so much damage. On top of that, you're getting your Unite move at level 8. This is a big freaking deal. This is one level earlier than any other attacker. And in this meta where Dreadnought matters so much, by the way, Dreadnought is happening right around the time when everybody in the game is starting to approach level 7 to level 8. So you're gonna unlock your Fairy Frolic Unite move in the middle of this Dreadnought fight a lot of times. You probably just snowball out of control from that. You pop your Unite, win a fight over Dreadnought, you kill the Dreadnought, and you snowball from there. If you look at their stats scaling, we're actually going to go to the stats page. We're going to look at all the special attackers. We'll see that at the low levels, Sylveon's special attack is at 50, just like everybody else. When you hit level 4 and you evolve, you spike up and you actually have more damage than Pikachu, Cramorant, and Gardevoir. But look at this number as it goes on. One level up, Pikachu has more. A level up again. Ooh, now Pikachu's above by 40. A level up again. Now Pikachu's ahead by 60. Level up again. At level 8, you're down by almost 100. At level 8, you still have some damage. You're not like falling super far behind. And you kind of, level 8 is like this like pocket of time where like, let's take off these things. Blastoise hasn't evolved yet. So when you see, when at level 9, when Blastoise evolves, their defenses jump up. I'm just jumping between level 8 and level 9. You can see that the defenses jump up drastically on Blastoise because they level up. Same thing on Charizard. Charizard evolves at level 9, so their stats all jump up. So specifically at level 8, Sylveon still has a decent power. I know you are starting to fall behind, but you still have decent power, and you have your Unite move, and other Pokemon haven't evolved yet. So level 8 is like this, supposed to be the specific timing. It's like a timing attack in StarCraft where Sylveon is really strong, and other physical attackers are like, or physical all-rounders are like really weak during this time. But look what happens when you keep going on and on and on all the way to level 15. Look at this. This is like the worst special attack stat out of any special attacker. So we have to bring in the Gengar, who's another Pokemon who's supposed to fall off in the late game. The only other Pokemon who has like low special attack in the late game is Gengar. Another thing about this Pokemon, if you you probably didn't notice, but this cooldown reduction stat, all these Pokemon at level 3, nobody has any cooldown reduction. At level 4, Ninetales is special, they get 5%. At level 5, everybody else catches up and they get their 5% cooldown reduction, even Sylveon. At level 9, everybody gets buffed up to 15% cooldown reduction, except Sylveon, who only gets 10%. And then when you scroll up even further to level 13, that's when all these attackers get 25%, and Sylveon's still stuck at 10% all the way until the end of the game. So cooldown reduction and special attack stats don't scale that well on this Pokemon. And that's how this Pokemon is supposed to work. They're supposed to not scale too well into the late game. The problem is that these multipliers are so ridiculously good that even when you aren't scaling that well, the cooldown is so low on these moves, it doesn't even matter that you don't have that much cooldown reduction. The multipliers on these moves are so high. This is at level 1, and for level 1 moves, we were seeing things like 100 damage, and over here at 700, like... And this is first hit. This move hits 4 times. Bear in mind that the first hit is the only one that does the full the full damage here. All the subsequent hits on the same target will do 25% less damage, or 25% of the total damage. But still, 715 just on the first hit, that's a freaking whopping amount. This is basically a better Greninja. And let me tell you why I think this is a better Greninja. If you compare the damage, like if you fight like a neutral camp with Cinderace or with Sylveon using Hyper Voice, this Pokemon does as much damage as Cinder, but it's an AoE, which makes sense. They are higher risk because they have to get closer, so it should be that way. The problem is that when you compare it to Greninja. Now, Greninja is a Pokemon who also does about as much damage as these Pokemon. All do about the same damage. And Greninja can do that damage in range if they would like to. They can use the ranged water attacks, or they can actually switch to melee mode if they get really close to the target they're attacking. And when they're in melee mode, they do AoE, because melees do cleave damage to everybody in the area around who they melee target. And so just like how Sylveon does the Cinderace level damage but in an AoE, Greninja has the option to do Cinderace level damage in an AoE too. The problem is that when Greninja does the AoE damage, they have to be in melee range, and so they can't really do that against things like Venusaur Petal Dance or Zeraora Discharge. Now Sylveon, on the other hand, does this massive AoE damage, and it's not in melee range like Greninja. It's actually in this mid-range at the tip of Hyper Voice. Greninja, has that damage ceiling because it's AoE, but it's balanced because it's melee. Cinderace doesn't have as high of a damage ceiling because they aren't AoE, they're single target, but they're really easy to use and they can do their damage from range. Sylveon is really OP because she's basically doing both of these Pokemon's job at the same time. Sylveon is doing damage from range, but also doing AoE damage, and it's freaking massive damage. So that's why for me, this Pokemon goes into S tier, above Cinderace even. And just for that Unite move at level 8 is a really big deal. Another reason why this Pokemon is just really solid in the top tier. I think one of the coolest things to me about this Pokemon is you can go in the jungle and guaranteed have level 8 for the first Dreadnought fight, or you can go in lane, and if you just have a good laning phase, then you'll be like level 7 by the time Dreadnought spawns, and if the Dreadnought fight drags on, then you can pop into level 8 and use your Unite move, and usually it's only supports and junglers who have their Unite move for the first Dreadnought. But on Sylveon, you can not take the jungle slot, so someone else, you could have like a Cinderace or a Venusaur in the jungle, and maybe those Pokemon get their Unite move. They level up to level 9 for the first Dreadnought, and then Sylveon in the lane, basically kind of taking the same slot that as a Cramorant would take. Sylveon in the lane still has the potential, if they do well during the laning phase, to actually hit level 8 and have their Unite move too. So by having Sylveon in the lane, Venusaur in the jungle, and let's just say Blissey as your support, just for example, you might have the Sylveon ult, the Venusaur ult, and the Blissey ult, all three of those online for that first Dreadnought. I'm just going to tell you the item build that I think is best is Choice Specs, Focus Band, Buddy Barrier. Choice Specs is just the best single damage item for this Pokemon. Wise Glasses, a good item to consider if you want to replace the Focus Band. Or you could go for Special Attack Specs and Score Shield combo, if you think that you can pull off an early game scoring combination, then this would actually be more damage than Choice Specs because you get so much special attack stacks. If you have a level 20 special attack specs and you stack it up 6 times, then you're actually going to get so much damage. That's it for my tier list. Thank you all so much for watching, and don't forget to click the link to my live stream in the description if you want to see more of my Pokemon Unite content before I even upload it to this YouTube channel. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.